Probably not catching much of this anyway, because of the wind and so on, and the sound of the sea. It's coming in. There are so many waves upon waves. You see, the fact that it's coming in and then going out because of this, because of the moon, the moon, because of a floating orb, it's just outrageous. It's just outrageous. In the same way that there are various transformations that are occurring as dogs. There are various transformations that are occurring, okay, because of matter, because of organic matter, because of energistics of electromagnetic patterns that are zipping around dogs' heads and our heads and so on. Okay? I'm making my way up here because of the dogs. Because that's a big dog. Now, I have a memory of a dog now. It's not really a memory. It's like an experience. And the experience was that I got bitten. I got bitten not just by one dog on one event. On another day, I got bitten by um, two Rottweilers. All right, two Rottweilers in the night. Okay, so if uh, you can imagine, taking a nice walk, moonlight, beautiful, stars, and then, along the side of the sea, and then you have this, you see these dogs. You hear the dogs first of all, and you're like, oh, okay then. You turn round, and there's a small little building, and then you hear the and you're like, okay, and then you see these two dark shapes coming at you. There's a pool of water in front of you, and they're running down the sand, and you're like, okay, okay, and then they're running across this, sprays of water in the moonlight, as these two dogs, three, there's a third one further off, and you're like, okay, okay, and you're just thinking, well, you're not thinking, you're just going, okay, what's going on, what's going on? Some part of my brain is thinking, man, they're just going to stop running at me. Somebody's going to call them back. They don't, they just keep on coming. And it's like, oh shoot. And when it starts to recognise that, wait a minute, it's just you and two dogs running at you, big ones, and that's it. I think, I better do something about it. So you start kind of like getting really kind of worried or frightened. And then, sure enough, they come at you and they're biting you. And the sensation of dogs biting into your flesh, it's quite a peculiar experience. And so one like bit me in my butt, another one bit me in my knee, and it's a very strange experience because to feel like fangs in you. And I sort of stumbled, turned around, I was going, oh fuck, or I was going, oh my god, or something. I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. I remember sort of turning around, almost falling into the sand, and lifting up my arms because they were, jumping at me. And one actually bit into the back of my arm here, and perhaps, horrible, horrible. So, and they just bit. They didn't bite and sort of hang on there. They just kind of, it was almost like a little kiss, an aggressive kiss. Um, and then miraculously they were called back or they gave up or something or other, and then they just kind of barked a bit, and I stumbled away. Now, that experience is in me. I just recalled it. You saw me recalling this experience. The experience is somewhere in here. It is contained in my body. It is contained in my memory. An electromagnetic thing. It's probably not a structure of neurons, all right? It's probably much more of a flow of electromagnetic waves that occurred, okay? And for some reason or other, it's contained in here. Which means that when I see a dog, right, I go, wait a minute, these dogs, I, and when there are two dogs, I think, and there's an association. That's how our minds work. It's quite a complex kind of like dynamic, but it's dynamic nevertheless. Now, that means there's an interaction between the stimulus that's occurring externally and coming at you and whatever it is that's floating around inside our heads. And there is a meeting. Now that meeting is occurring in dogs as it's occurring in cats, as it's occurring in all animals. Okay, there's an interaction. And in fact, there's an interaction with the tree, because the wind blows and it moves about and it grows in a certain direction, and there's an interface. It's not as active. The interface is not as active or animated or volatile, or it has volition like an animal has. It's not as complex. The dynamic is not as complex because they don't have a central nervous system, really. Anyway, where are we with time? Ooh, gosh. Right, so, therefore, it's not that we are we are different. Okay, so what we're talking about is different shapes, different forms of dynamic that occur in time. So if we think of an amoeba as being a minimal form of existence, it exists in time. There's a structure in time which allows this thing to homeostasis for it to exist. Similarly, with a more complex, a multi-cellular organism, let's say a tree. Similarly, that has kind of like, or an organ in your body, which has perception. And then we have this kind of like fairly complicated organ, which is specifically neurons, which supports a specific emergent level of electromagnetic movement. Okay, not flow of just water, electromagnetic movement of a certain complexity. So yes, a tree has definitely a certain kind of like electromagnetic field. However, it's very simple. Whereas the thing that happens up here happens to be quite complicated. Same with a dog. However, ours is even more complicated in that it allows an emergence of something else that occurs in time, which rides above the emergent form of the electromagnetic field. What does all this mean? It means that there are waves upon waves upon waves. Okay? There are effects upon effects upon effects upon effects. And this self-reflective quality happens to be of the same quality as an amoeba. Okay? In the sense that there is homeostasis. It just so happens that because of the fact that we are self-reflective, because of a particular shape, form, and time, we happen to be self-reflective. It means that we are aware of this dynamic, and it manifests in us in a specific way. The living age that is the amoeba, that is the tree, that is the dog, and so on and so forth, is in us this you. Okay. So, consciousness is not anything extra. Okay? It happens to be a particular emergent form of life. And our self-reflective is just a particular concentration. It's like a little bubble. And that's how I imagine it, actually. Don't think we've got any time to cover this. Well, maybe. And that's kind of what I imagine it to be. Imagine it like a bubble. So when you saw the flow of the stream there, it's kind of like, okay, the best example I've got is like, the Bernoulli effect. So you've got like a vacuum cleaner, it's put on reverse, okay, which is blowing out air. So you've got a hose, and you've got like a ping pong ball, and the ping pong ball you can put on top of this kind of jet of air, and it sits there and rotates. And you can actually turn it on its side, and the ping pong ball remains in its position, because of the Bernoulli effect, it's to do with air pressures and so on and so forth, that allows this thing to exist there. That's